Hello, everyone. Good morning for most of us. I would say that it's still morning. Some of those that are on the East Coast, they're already into their lunch hour. Yet, Jenny, Landon, I am really, really, really glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor. And it's been so long since we saw each other in person and first started talking about doing this. And I'm excited to get it done.
No, it's like we are here. We are here
Yeah.
together. And it's awesome. So, my name's Teresa Snyder, and I'm all about bringing conscious conversations out into the world so that we can all gain knowledge, find some clarity, and learn a lesson. And Jenny, when I met you in California, in San
Mhm.
Diego, at Happy
Mhm.
Warrior, we didn't even meet honestly until the end out
Mhm.
in the hallway. But when we met, we definitely connected
Oh, yeah.
on
Absolutely.
so many levels, and your book is extraordinary. So let's just
Thank
kind of
you.
dive in and let's talk about who you are
Mhm.
and your story of what happened and what's going on now.
Yeah. So if I were to start at the beginning of this part of my life journey, it took place on June 2nd, 1999. So it's been 20 years now that I lost my dad to suicide. And I was his baby girl, and I honestly, I didn't understand what happened to him because that was not a reflection of who he was. And even though I grew up in Texas, I was going to college in San Francisco, and I was really fortunate to be in the process of getting my degree in psychology. So after I went through that initial shutdown, heartache, don't know how to breathe, don't know how to get out of bed, I was really fortunate that I had good people in my life who helped me to realize that I needed to start living to make myself proud. And so I got back to school and I spoke with each of my instructors and let them know what happened. And they helped me to connect with the right people and really process his death and understand his suicide. Um, After I graduated from college, I became a crisis counselor and a public educator on suicide prevention.
Wow. Well, let
And
me just kind of
yeah,
hold you there for a second, and
please.
let's talk about this because there is so much misconception around suicide. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you and I know we talked about our own struggles, our own personal struggles of setbacks, letdowns, and
Yeah.
I'm just going to put it out there. You and I both, we each have had our own experience of a suicide attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's hard for me to say. It's like a punch in the gut. Yet I share it. You and I share it. I don't share it all the time. We
Mm-hmm.
share it to enlighten and hopefully help those that are
Right.
struggling and suffering at home and maybe dealing with something. And so you had gone
Yeah.
through it. You'd lost your
Yeah.
child to suicide. So you were the
Yep.
survivor of it.
Yeah, so I lost my dad and I was a survivor. And, at that point, I knew from the moment that he died that I needed something good to come from his death. Like, I could not handle this being his end of story. And so, like I said, I became a crisis counselor and a public educator on suicide prevention. I did that job in the Bay Area, and then I did it as well in Minnesota when we moved here in 2003. Shortly after we moved here, I got pregnant and had a high risk pregnancy. There were a lot of complications. And after I delivered my daughter, I actually went through postpartum depression and missed all the signs. I missed everything, even though, again, this was my world. This is what I was teaching people. And somehow I missed it all. And I had this idea that I was being punished for
Mm,
mistakes I had made in my past,
mm.
and that I just needed to own those mistakes because my brain wasn't working. And so I thought, okay, if I just like own all of my mistakes and apologize and I'm accountable, then whatever this is that I'm feeling, this guilt and this misery, it'll go away. And so I actually told my husband that, like, every mistake I'd ever made in my entire life, from childhood through adulthood, including the fact that I had had an affair during the second year of our marriage. And I'm going to tell you that none of that helped what I was feeling to go away. And if anything, that's when I became hopeless. That's when I suddenly thought, I'm never going to get better. Whatever this is just getting worse. And now my husband can't even look at me. You know, and even though, and I will clarify, I had more of an emotional affair. It wasn't as much physical as it was emotional, but it was an affair. And, you know, and I just went into an even darker place. And it got to where it was as if I had two brains. I had the brain that was telling me to feed my baby, to get out of bed, brush my teeth. A lot of the things, if it did not involve my daughter, I didn't do. So that little brain saying, brush your teeth, take a shower, eat food, it didn't matter. Like, none of that really was important. When it came to feed the baby, hold the baby, make sure the baby's okay, my daughter kept me alive. Like, the fact that I had her in my arms was what was keeping me alive. I was terrified to drive my car because this second brain that I had was telling me every possible way that I could die. And it was getting louder and louder and more intense. And again, I
And I
was
just
really,
want to kind of pause you there for a second. Also, is so just this morning, literally, and I think Patty Mays is watching, and I'd love it if she wanted to chime in and say that she is watching. I was just having a really raw, authentic conversation with her, and I let her know, because she does a lot of clearing and energy work and different things, that I'm kind of in this space right now, just in this moment of what am I going to do next. So I was sharing with her some of this of my own, you know, beating myself up, the stories I've been telling myself, making myself wrong. And I know better. Yeah. Okay. So what do we do? And you were saying that admitting it out loud to your husband.
Oh, it made it worse.
It made it worse.
It made it worse. So, but the problem was, at that time, I didn't admit I'm in this dark place. All I admitted was, I need to tell you everything I did wrong. Right.
Okay.
And because, again, my brain wasn't working,
Right.
and I wasn't registering, like, I'm going through depression. I am becoming suicidal. That's not what I was thinking. I was thinking, I have so much shame and guilt, and I've made so many mistakes, and I just need to own them. And if I own them, then I can process it and let it go, and I can be healthy again. Like, I can be happy again. And that's, like I said, that's not what happened. And within a few weeks of telling my husband my deepest, darkest secrets, he came home and he found me sitting in our bedroom in the dark, holding our baby girl. And he stood in the doorway and he asked me what was going on and if I was okay. And in that moment, I just looked up at him, and for the first time, I mean, even really without thinking, the words just came out of my mouth, and I told him that I was scared I was going to die. And I am so fortunate because he was there with me when my dad died. And so he knew what I was saying. He knew to take me serious, and he also knew what I needed to get better. And for me, it was acupuncture. And so I had begun experiencing panic attacks after my dad died and was introduced to acupuncture by a classmate at school. And acupuncture allowed me to experience healing like I'd never experienced before. It allowed me to feel calm and at peace for the first time in my life. So after my daughter was born and my husband, he helped me get back into acupuncture. He would come home early from work once a week and helped me set up the appointments, because honestly, I couldn't have done it. I could not have found an acupuncturist and made the appointments and made sure I got there. I mean, that is how far gone I was. I was not functioning. So he did all of that for me, and I am so grateful. And acupuncture wasn't a quick fix, but with time, and it was a combination of acupuncture and herbs.
That's what I was going to say.
It rebalanced my hormones, right? So everything's out of whack for me.
Right.
You
And I
know?
think that is honestly even what I'm kind of experiencing for myself right now is because this is what I want people to hear or get is if you are experiencing any kind of a setback, if you're feeling any kind of depression, loneliness, you're not even sure,
Mm-hmm.
that that's what Jenny and I are here. We're sharing authentically so that you might can recognize. And Patty gave me an excellent idea. She suggested I get a canvas and go and get some spackle and turn on some drumming music and do that. I'm loving that you're suggesting acupuncture.
And I have more to suggest because my story doesn't end with me becoming suicidal and getting better. My story continues that I now have a 15-year-old daughter. And I'm free to share this story because she is now publicly sharing her story.
Okay.
She actually talked on a stage for 150 adults just a few weeks ago. And she's sharing her story, and that is that my 15-year-old daughter attempted suicide in January.
Wow.
And this is what I want people to understand is suicide isn't the result of one thing. Okay, suicide, and even like when we were going through mental health struggles, that is the result of multiple things that are going on in our lives, right? So, and even understanding that our mental health is not the disorder that people talked about, right? It's not depression. It's not multiple personality disorder. It's not schizophrenia. Our mental health is an individual's psychological, emotional, and social well-being. And so it is possible for us to experience what I call mental health fatigue, which can be brought on from a common cold. It can be brought on from not having the right nutrition or not, getting enough sleep. But think about it. When you have the flu, is your brain working the way you want it to? Are you able to sit down at your desk and work? I don't know about you, but I know I can't. But what about when you just feel that way, but there's no obvious explanation as to why you can't get your brain to focus, why you have zero desire to take a shower. That's one of my things now that I pay attention to. It's like, did I have to struggle to get out of bed? Did I have to talk myself into taking a shower or putting on makeup? Just basic things like that.
I love that you're sharing that because those are very, very simple ways of being aware. And again, to bring up like the flu-like condition, when you are literally sick, not feeling good. And I'm going to even take it one step further, that for me, whenever I thought alcohol was going to be the solution, alcohol ended up only being a temporary, what I thought was a solution. But what people that I'm wanting to get out into the world is that if you take on something like alcohol or even gambling or other addiction behavior to escape, eating, food disorders, all those kinds of things in the moment, but the alcohol causes more depression. You're
Absolutely.
not feeling good the next day. And for me, if I'm not feeling good first thing in the morning, that is a red flag because that's when our body should be the most rested. Our subconscious mind should not be working quite just yet. So if you're not feeling good immediately in the morning, then now what? So thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that's, those are red flags for me as well. And not saying that if I don't feel great about getting out of bed, that doesn't mean I have depression. And that's what I want people to understand is being in tune with your mental health, knowing that there is mental health fatigue, there is mental health distress, there are mental health disorders. Okay. And if we let the fatigue keep going and we're not paying attention to it, it will turn into that distress. And then that distress, again, if we're not paying attention and trying to work on improving it, it will turn into a disorder. And that's what I want people to really understand. And that's why it's so important that we're talking about mental health, even with our 2-year-olds, right? Our babies. And even if we're not talking to them about it, we are being conscientious for them because we are deciding what their daily activities look like. We are deciding what food is entering their body. We decide what products are being used on their bodies. And all of those things can impact our mental health. Think about this is probably one of my just big frustrations in the world is when I am in an environment like, say, church or at a gym and I'm working out and I'm in my mode and someone comes in with an obscene amount of perfume. And it's one of those, like at the gym, you have to stop, you've got to move, or at church, you're just sitting there going, I can't move. I'm stuck here next to this person and I can't breathe because my head hurts because of whatever they're wearing.
Yeah.
Okay. That impacts your mental health. And a lot of people who maybe they don't have the headaches, their body is still trying to process all of these chemicals that we are putting on and in our bodies.
Mhm.
And when you think about how alcohol, we know alcohol can make you feel good in the moment, but then the next day, not so good.
Right.
It's the same with food. It's the same. Our body absorbs things when we put it on our bodies. And so being mindful of what we're using and how we're using it, it's all critical. And I just think we live at a point in our lives, we're not getting enough physical activity compared to the way we used to. We don't stimulate our brains in a way that we need to. And then we are bombarding our system constantly with chemicals and toxins. And whether those toxins are from a physical thing that we put on or in our body, or the toxins of the TV shows or the books or the YouTube or Snapchat or whatever, it's
Yeah.
toxic.
And Jenny, I want to add to that is you're so spot on. And then here's the next question I would even put forth is when I'm in mental fatigue or kind of like a setback, like this past week, there was a job opportunity that I thought was going to work out and it didn't. And it kind of took me back. And then it was kind of like, well, then I don't want to get out because I'm feeling disappointed, or I don't want to go to the gym because my friends are going to ask. Or I used to teach at that gym. It's hard for me to go and really participate because I remember what it used to be like. Same thing with the products. Like there are still times where I just get a dadgum gallon of ice cream and put my spoon in it. And it's maybe in the moment, but what are things that we can talk about, like an accountability partner, a vetted, safe person to talk to? Misty Lane is now on this broadcast. Misty Lane is someone that, I don't know if you know her, Jenny, but she has a phenomenal story. Patty, Carol, Tim, these people that are engaging right now. This is how together we can share this knowledge. We can talk about that, we may eat something at the moment, or we may put on lotion or bad TV shows in the moment, but let's get real. What can we do to promote our health? So back to you.
So I want to go back to, the fact that my daughter, so here I am, this is my world, right? This is what I work in. This is what I am passionate about. And I started growing out of darkness in 2017. And so 2 years after I started it, to have my daughter actually attempt suicide. And it was one of those, like, am I a hypocrite? Am I like, how have I failed my daughter? And how can I have people listen to me and what I'm trying to share when my own child is fighting me on everything I'm doing? Here's the reality. She is her own person. And I cannot make her do anything. And so even though I don't have all the answers, please, everyone know that. I don't think any of us do. But I have suggestions and tips, and I know things that have worked for me and what I've seen and learned. And so I try to share those with her. And the more I would try to share, the more she would fight me, until she attempted suicide. And everything changed. For one, I sat down with her and I told her that I realized my greatest fear wasn't that she would die. And I would be really sad. I'd be heartbroken, but I'd also know that she would be with some incredible people waiting for her there in heaven. My greatest fear is that she will live a life of misery and that she's going to turn to drugs and alcohol to self-medicate. And that a long time ago, I learned that we shouldn't make decisions based out of fear. And yet that's all I had been doing for months, was making decisions based on fear. And I said, look, I want you to live a life of love and joy and passion and excitement. And so I'm not going to fight to keep you alive. I am going to fight for you to live a life that you love. And everything shifted for us after that. I really focused my intention on what I wanted for her versus what I was scared of. And she, after she took some time to actually hear what I was saying, she came around and she has started working with me. And now, again, this is where I'll tell you, for her, we were well beyond mental health fatigue, right? She was in disorder
Yes.
point.
Yep.
So it took us approaching it from multiple facets. So we worked with a holistic chiropractor to address the fact that she had sustained a concussion. We also worked with a naturopath doctor who discovered that her body was not processing vitamins and minerals correctly. And so she was deficient in multiple areas. So we worked on that. We also are working with a specialized talk therapy practitioner. So she does cognitive behavioral therapy once a week. We also hired an executive functioning coach to help her with her academics because she's delayed in executive functioning.
Okay.
If you have a child, and I don't care how old they are, if you have a child who seems overly frustrated and agitated, they're always disorganized, they leave stuff laying around everywhere, and you think, oh my gosh, this kid is going to be the end of me, right? Like they just leave stuff scattered, they start projects and they don't finish. I want you to learn about executive functioning because it is a primary part of our brain development. And some kids, I think a lot of kids these days are delayed in executive functioning.
Ooh,
And we need,
so you see, like neural pathways, frontal lobe,
and it
your
doesn't
amygdala.
fully, and it doesn't fully develop until you're in your 20s. But there are
Exactly.
certain things that should be developing, by junior high, right? Like she should be able to sit down and write a paper without needing instructions for what each paragraph should involve, but she was struggling with all of that. And then she was so embarrassed to ask for help. And, and so we went round and round trying to figure out what was going on. And then we went round and round with the school for 2 years. We battled the school to get her the support she needed. And then we realized they are overwhelmed. Schools do not have the money or the funding to work with the kids the way these kids need.
Yes.
So, we are fortunate. We were able to connect with a gentleman in Atlanta, and he helped us find an executive functioning coach here. We live in St. Paul.
Yes.
And so, and it took us, even with that, like we're on our third coach because I don't want to say millennials, but maybe, like their ability to stick with something has been a little bit challenging, but yet, now knowing that she has someone to help her academically to stay on top of her work. So we are approaching it from so many different avenues. And I have to tell you, she is the healthiest I have seen her in years. That does not mean that we do not have our rough days. And just last week, we had a couple really rough days. And I had a very real conversation with her because she was like, I just want to go on antidepressants. I don't want to do all this work. And I am not telling anyone who's on antidepressants that you shouldn't or you couldn't be on those. And especially if you're feeling better, that's not my place, right? It's your body. You have to know what's right for you. I lost my dad on antidepressants. I have multiple siblings who've been on them and nearly lost their lives while on them and while trying to come off of them. It is not something I take lightly. That is a chemical that you're putting in your body that is really just going to treat the symptom, but not the problem. And so this is what I said to her. I said, Kaylee, I know better and you know better. And honestly, antidepressants are for people who are needing an immediate fix or to cover up immediate symptom. But a lot of times antidepressants can cause more problems. I mean, have you looked at the list of side effects that they can cause? And they can be very dangerous. And I said, if you're really serious about getting well, then you're going to look at the following things. And I made a whole list for her that I'll have to put on our website. But it had to do with, are you paying attention to your nutrition and your physical activity? I know people today don't want to hear about exercise. Like we hear about it a lot. Here's the thing. By the time I graduated high school, I was 6 feet tall and I only weighed 115 pounds. I had no reason to exercise in my mind. That's what I thought. I was like, I'm tall and I'm skinny, and what's exercise going to do for me? I can eat whatever I want. My metabolism is insane. Exercise is not about being thin. Exercise is a way that we detox our body from toxins. It is vital that we detox our body every day. You want to get your sweat on for at least 15 minutes or more. Yes. Our bodies need it. So I talked to her about that. I talked to her about her social setting, who she is spending time with. Are people building her up or are they tearing her down? And I have a whole list that I'm blanking on right now, but all of those things, they are so vital. Oh, you have to stimulate your brain.
Yes.
Okay. Find something that you want to do that's at least remotely interesting to you. My husband's been trying to get me to play golf for 20 years. Like in 1999, he bought me my first set of golf clubs and looked at him and was like, dude, why? Why? And he was cute. He was like, well, my grandparents, they play golf together. And I just thought maybe it could be something we do when we get old. And I took a golf lesson in college, but it didn't take. And then a couple years ago, I realized, okay, I want to move to Arizona when I retire, which means I'm going to need to know how to play golf because that's the only way you're going to meet people. And so I started taking golf lessons, which I hate taking lessons of any kind. I hate not knowing how to do something, and I am a perfectionist, but I did it. And I got to tell you, I fell in love with golf and how challenging it is and how frustrating it is, and the fact that you constantly need lessons. I learned in that year how much happier I was. Like between learning how to do a nonprofit, which, good grief. I mean, I feel like I am constantly learning, right? Like just between running a nonprofit, learning how to communicate, learning how to do podcasts, but being really intentional that I am challenging my brain in healthy and productive ways.
Yes. And I love
Yeah.
that. And I know, and I'm okay with that. We're going to go over a little bit in time if you're okay with it, or do you need to go?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
No, I'm okay.
Yes, because this is such a good, vital, juicy conversation. And that I hope people can take things away from this, that whenever we are in any kind of mental fatigue, and Misty may or may not still be watching. She was jokingly saying wintergreen lifesavers, that she eats wintergreen lifesavers whenever, that sugar dose or that sugar rush or whatever. But let's get back to brass tacks, is that whenever when I become self-sabotaging or pity party, and sometimes it's when you're running, like for you, you're running a nonprofit. For me, I'm sorting out my entrepreneurial path, and I know I'm an entertainer. I know I'm a speaker, but how do you really get out there on the right stages and partner with the right people?
Yeah.
Like, whoa, okay, let's take a moment, go literally turn on a podcast or an audible book, your audible book, whatever. Go walk for 15 to 20 minutes and really listen to something else, so you're not just in that, oh man,
in your head. Yeah.
I got it. And I learned to love golf also. And so that's another outlet of being outdoors, communicating with others, learning lessons, being frustrated, but also having fun. So I would say that.
And I do
Journaling.
think
Go ahead.
one of the big things that you've touched on, so you're going in this entrepreneur world, and I am too, just in the nonprofit sector. There's a lot of days where I'm alone, where I am doing this on my own. So 2 more things to be aware of is, one, are you an introvert and extrovert? And I don't mean like, are you social or not social, but do you process out loud? Do you recharge by being around other people? That is an extrovert. Or are you an introvert? Do you process internally, and do you recharge by being alone? So for extroverts who are taking on jobs where there's a lot of alone time, that is difficult.
Guilty.
Know that is difficult.
Yeah,
And so,
guilty.
one of the things I did with my daughter last week when she was struggling is I actually said to her, I want you to sit down. I want you to write down all of the triggers. I want you to write down the things that cause you stress, that cause you anxiety, that deplete you. And then I want you to write down all the things that help you feel good.
Those triggers are good. They're still triggers.
Yeah,
they're positive triggers.
But they're good, right? And so I had her put both of them down, and she was so cute because she said to me, she's like, when am I done? Like, have I written enough things? I've got like 15 here. And, and I said, what, babe, this isn't a homework. Like, there isn't a done. You may add to this the rest of your life. And I said, I wanted you to be able to write it down, because sometimes looking at it, just being able to look at those things helps us to be more aware of what might trigger us to go into a dark place. And then what might be that light that brings us out. And before I could even finish talking to her, she turns around and looks at me and she goes, Mom, I feel so much better. Because when I was writing down things that make me feel better, I realized there's a lot of things I don't use. And there's things that in the moment of getting stressed out and frustrated, I don't think to use those because I'm so stressed out. And
Yes.
so it made me actually think of one of her favorite songs is oh gosh, I don't know who sings it, and I'm so bad with music. Is it's the sober letter to you or something like that, but it's about this guy who writes a letter to himself being sober, telling him like don't call her, like here's all the
Oh,
things you need to
cool.
know, right? And he
Right?
keeps that letter on his refrigerator. So he's saying like if you're drunk, come read this letter, right? And I just was like, this is her letter. It's a letter to herself, not when she's drunk versus sober, but when she's in the light versus in the dark.
Yes.
Right? Have
Yes.
that letter somewhere where you're going to see it, where it's going to catch your attention and remind you of the things you should be doing
I
when you're in
love
that dark place.
that. I
So,
love that, you guys. I
yeah.
hope chime in and let me know if you found something useful out of this, because I love that. And this is kind of funny. Is I went, and I'm going to reach over here. I went literally to the store, to Target yesterday, and bought some fun journals,
Oh, nice.
literally just because I thought I want to get into and I am an extrovert. Like I'm home alone a lot, so I know I can be alone. It's not that, like, not necessarily like codependent, but I
Right.
would rather paint with someone. I would rather, go to an event and speak and then cheer you on while you're speaking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, go to some of
Mhm.
these events where we're there kind of together and we can brainstorm, and I could help you
Mhm.
come up with ideas for your nonprofit and you could help me
Mhm.
come up with ideas. But we can cheer each other on for promoting our book or sharing our endeavors. And so I know that about myself. And what
Yeah.
I know also is, where do I get back really as quick as I can and not get stuck over here with
Mhm.
woes me, maybe this entrepreneurial thing is not a good idea, whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So in closing,
Well,
because I mean, we could, yeah,
well, and I
go ahead,
want to
go
tell
ahead.
you one other thing
Yeah.
to really that I think people are not in tune with, and I was not in tune with it until a few years ago. And is are you an empath? And I used to have this idea of what an empath was, and I was like, no, that's not me. Like I don't hear people or see people or anything like that. But it's not that. It's do you have high empathy, right? So for
Mhm,
me, I can walk into a room and whatever the energy is, it will consume me.
mhm.
And I've had to learn to protect myself. Both of my daughters have high empathy. They walk into a space and they feel it. So, again, I'm going to gear this to people, but also think about your children. If they are struggling at school socially, start talking to them about what are they feeling, right? And help them to identify, are they feeling their emotions or are they feeling the emotions of others? Because I'm going to tell you, high school is so much harder these days than what it was for us. I mean, with all the technology and just, I don't know, the emotional level that these kids are going through on a regular basis, like it scares me sometimes,
Mhm.
and so I know Kaylee, when she's home for a few days and she's not in that space, she's healthier.
Mhm.
She goes back to school and she just, as the week goes on, she becomes weaker and weaker. And so being aware of like what you're feeling, is it yours or is it the people around you? And then learning tools, and I don't have all the tools on that because that's still new for me, but learning tools to protect yourself from the energy of other people and the emotions of other people.
Love it. That is so good. It's so, so, so good. I love everything that you've shared today. And Jenny, I'm going to put your website back up, so people can definitely, growingoutofdarkness.org. Your book is
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
What you've shared today is like extraordinary. I just have this,
Thank you.
talk about being an empath. I have this true love for you. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
really, like, and
Thank
this has
you.
been such a good conversation. Talk about when you're an empath, empathy, whatever word you want to use. At
Mhm.
least I'm taking on the good energy for today.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, I'm going to
Absolutely.
go get outside and walk my dog, whatever the case may be. So
Yeah.
just know me again, connecting with people. So everyone, thank you for watching. Jenny, thank you for being here.
Thank you for
Do
having me.
you have an event or anything coming up? anything that we need to know about, or
You know what? My next 2 events that I am scheduled for aren't until January. I have
you could
one
be here
in
like before
I
we
know.
know it?
Well, actually, I will be in California, but it's a private. So the public events that are open to the public are both in January, and one is in New York and one is in Michigan. Both are on my website. Both are incredible. Additional, they are nonprofits that are doing everything they can to raise awareness. So if you're in New York or Michigan, please go check out my website under the events page, and you can learn more about those.
Awesome, and that just might be, I mean, I love New York, so who knows?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, my name's Teresa Snyder. I'm in Texas today, and I'm open definitely to, as a media host, bringing conscious conversations and stories like Jenny out into the
Mhm.
world, connecting with all of you socially and yet in for live events. So thank you, Jenny, for being here. I just really
Yeah.
think you're amazing. I hope you'll connect with Misty Lane, who was on the
Okay.
broadcast, and really just all of you. I encourage you to take on at least 1 to 2 of these suggestions and let us know how it works for you. And we'll see you all again very soon. Bye
Great.
bye.
Thanks. Bye.